So Dante, in his great piece, The Inferno, another speaker up here, don't I? Just step in front of it. It writes, "In the middle of the journey of our life, I found myself within a dark woods where the straight way was lost." Well, good morning, everybody. I thought I'd talk today about hell. I mean, it's Lent. Aren't you supposed to talk about hell during Lent? It seems like a popular subject, don't you think? As I think about all the religious concepts that people talk about in the general population, hell seems to come up a lot, even more often than heaven. People speculate about hell. Books and movies are written about hell. People are often wished to hell immediately, go quickly. I've heard that term a lot, go to, and off you're supposed to go. And then, people use the word as an exclamation point, like blank no, and what the blank, things like that. And so, we hear the word hell so often that we kind of think that, it must be a good biblical word. It must be in there somewhere. But I hate to burst your bubble today, but I have to tell you that our understanding of hell is just a little bit in the Bible. It's not hardly in there at all. It's really all those Christians who came after the Bible people kind of developed this understanding of hell that we have today, kind of mostly in the Middle Ages, by the way. This Dante piece of the Divine Comedy that I quoted from just briefly is kind of one of those elaborations of what hell is and what we're supposed to fear and all those kind of things. So, it's when you think about it, it's sort of like one of those God is still speaking moments. We can look back, they're like, well, they thought it was speaking there. And we see this concept come up to us. In the Bible, people had this idea that when people died, there was sort of nothingness, with possibility of a mass resurrection at the end of time when God ended everything. That was sort of their concept of the afterlife and what was going to happen. And it was all those other people that kind of developed these ideas. And so later Christians took the writings of the book of Daniel in the Hebrew Scriptures and the book of Revelations and kind of came up with this idea of a place of heaven, of paradise, and of hell, of punishment for those who are wicked or the less merciful and those kind of things. And so we have this concept of heaven and hell and God trying to decide which place your people are supposed to go. And there's great jokes that come from this. There's the joke about Bill Gates passed away, and so he met God at the pearly gates, and God took him over to a computer screen and said, well, I'll let you have your choice. We'll give you a picture of what hell's like and what heaven's like before let you decide where you want to go. And so first there was hell, and it didn't look too bad. There were beaches and sunshine and parasols and umbrellas and all those kind of things, and then there was a picture of hell, and heaven, and it was nice, but not quite as nice, as the other picture. So Bill Gates chose hell, and about 2 weeks later, God showed up to see how he was doing, and Bill Gates was chained to a wall, and fire and flames were roasting him, and he was in agony, and he said, "Well, this isn't what I saw at all." And God said, "That was the screensaver." So we have all these images of heaven and hell and judgment and God and grace and mercy and all those kind of things. And when I think about it, I don't really think there is a hell, at least as we've come to understand it. I kind of like that idea of the Bible that there's nothingness unless God calls us into a higher reality that we call heaven. That's my concept of what's going to be. But what I do know is, as I look around the world, based on our actions, we can create hell right here on earth. And that's a reality that we know that I'd like to talk about today. And so, for example, all of us have had those conversations in the night to ourselves when we're afraid or scared or anxious or worried, and it feels like hell because of what we're going through at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I've read about situations where in the home there's fear or intimidation or violence or sexual abuse. That is hell for the family members. And then in the business world, we see example of workplace abuses and discrimination that create hell for the workers, for some of the workers, and we see racial discrimination and discrimination against poor and the disabled that create hell for some people. And we realize that in the world we live in, that there are those, because of where they are in life, have to take jobs that are less than humane or less than dignified, that can be hell on earth for them. So we know there is hell. And it's right here among us. And as I think about all of that, and I think about, well, what's the concepts and the realities that overcome the forces of hell, the forces of darkness and intolerance and injustice and all those kind of things. And what was that guy's name? Rowan Stewart. That. The sign that Rowan Stewart wore, I think, is the answer. More than the Industrial Revolution or the Enlightenment or other concepts. For God so loved the world that God gave his only offspring, so that everyone who trusts in God may not perish, but may have age-lasting activity. The power of love. I think love is the thing that overcomes the power of hell. We heard about this passage of Scripture in a conversation at night with Jesus and Nicodemus. And for the writer of the Gospel of John, the fact that Nicodemus came at night was a symbolic metaphor. Because, as you heard, Nicodemus was a leader of the Jewish people. He was a religious leader. And it was good that he sought Jesus out, but the metaphor of him coming at night meant that he was still in the dark. And you heard the conversation that they had, where Jesus said that if one is going to be in the presence of God, they have to be born from above. But he used the Greek word that can both mean from above or again. And Nicodemus heard again. And so he asked the question, well, how can anybody be born again? And he got thinking about this physical thing. And Jesus says, no, you're not getting it. Jesus was trying to say what Betsy was just saying up here. It's about the Spirit, that after our physical birth, we're invited to have a spiritual birth. One that makes the reality of God more real. And to open ourselves to the presence of the wind and the Spirit, and let the Spirit in, and allow that Spirit to transform us in the power and presence of God's love. And then he gives that great line of God so loved the world, about what that transformation means for us. It changes us. It invites us to allow the love of God to wash over us and to be part of our reality. That's the power of this story. And so we're invited to use the power of love to be our principle of guidance. Because right here what the word love means is compassion and care and consideration. And so we're invited to use compassion and care and consideration in everything we do because we have this transforming spirit of God's love a part of us and believe that it's going to transform the world. And then we ask ourselves the very same question that Nicodemus asked. How can this be? That's what Nicodemus said. How can this be? Well, the way how can it be is because when that transformation happens to us, we invite the transformation for others and we transform the world around us. Let's take our families. If we're going to say that in our homes we're going to use compassion and care and consideration in everything we do, that becomes the guiding principle in our family. Now, does that mean there's not going to be any arguments? Of course not. But when somebody comes with a concern or a hurt or an issue, we deal with it with compassion, consideration, and care, and come to a solution that everybody can live with. In the workplace, I think we need to ask ourselves, because of the love of God, we have the power of creating heaven and hell on earth. And so in every decision we make, are we creating a little heaven or a little hell? So every time you have a decision to make about your company or your employees or about people that you're managing, as you come to a decision is, am I creating heaven or hell out of this situation? Or how much heaven am I creating or how much hell am I creating? And if we take that approach, that might influence how we manage that situation. The same thing that happens in the world right now. I think one of the problems in the world right now is there's not enough compassion in the world. There's not enough consideration. There's not enough care. We can have as many bombs and missiles and armaments and all those things. And yet if there's no love, if there's no compassion, if there's no care, there's still that undertone of uneasiness and fear and anger and hurt. And we've been lucky the last 40 years that we've managed not, as a nation, not to have that break out into riots and fear and hurt. But sooner or later, without compassion and care, those things happen. That's the power of hell, the power of chaos, when we don't allow love to be our guide. Very early in my ministry, I went to a conference at a Presbyterian college one summer, and there were both adults and youth at the conference. And it was one of those kind of conferences where the youth had their own separate activities, and while the adults went off to various seminars. And during one of the breaks, three or four youth approached me to ask me a question, because apparently they had been given an assignment that they were supposed to ask adults their opinion to one question and then come back and then talk about it. And the question was, what's your definition of heaven and hell? And I don't know why, but I sort of had this little revelation moment. And my answer was, heaven is wherever God is. Hell is wherever God is not. Heaven is wherever God is. Hell is wherever God is not. Well, to me, what that means is, my understanding of God is presence, and God is love. So wherever there's not love, God is not there. We call that hell. Heaven is wherever God is. And so I invite you to think about, what are you creating? heaven or hell? What system are you bringing into play in your life, in the system that you're supporting? Is it heaven or is it hell? A friend of mine by the name of Reverend Brian Sergio is a United Church of Christ minister and also a songwriter. And he writes this little song that goes, wherever God is, wherever love is, God is there too. God is in me because I love you. Wherever love is, God is there too. God is wherever love is. And because Brian's such a good friend of mine, he let me use this song. So we're going to teach it to you. Okay, so we're going to sing it. I'm going to sing it once, and then we're going to invite you to join in, right? First intro. Wherever love is, God is there too. God is in me 'cause I love you. Wherever love is, God is there too. God is wherever love is. Okay, join me. Wherever love is, God is there too. God is in me 'cause I love you. Wherever love is, God is there too. God is there wherever love is. Keep it going. Wherever love is, God is there too. God is in me 'cause I love you. Wherever love is, God is in me. God is wherever God is. One more time. One more time. Wherever love is, God is there too. God is in me 'cause I love you. Wherever love is, God is there too. God is wherever love is. Reverend Barbara and I have been working all through Lent to help you add grace to your life. Grace is about God's undeserved love just because we are. And so I invite you to take that love that God has for us and bring it into your reality and see what transformation happens. Amen.